Hey, now that we have learned how to keep ourselves warm by building shelters, wearing the right clothes, and building fires, we're going to talk about how not to get lost. We can do this in the neighborhood. We can do this if we go to the wilderness for a hike. And we're going to be talking about maps. We're going to talk about compasses. We're going to talk about how not to get lost in your neighborhood and all sorts of cool stuff just like that. So I'm going to be going over to the park. Should be back by 5 p.m. Yeah, that's a secret. Here's the secret. Anytime that I'm going to go outside, whether I'm going to go outside into the yard, or I'm going to go down the street and play in the neighborhood, or I'm going to go on a hike, I always need to tell someone where I'm going, who I'm going with, and what time I should be back home. That way, if something happens to me, it happens to you when you go outside, then somebody knows where you are and when to expect you to return home. If that happens, then they can get help to you as quickly as possible. So if I'm going to go out in the backyard, hey, Mom, I'm going out in the backyard. Hey, Dad, I'm going to go down the street. Hey, Mama, I'm going to go down and play at the park. I should be home by 5 p.m. or whatever time that you think that you might be back in. That way, everybody knows where you are and when you should come back home. This is essentially true when you go on a hike into the woods. If you're going to go hiking in the woods, I always want to tell somebody where I'm going, when I expect to return home. I spend a lot of time hiking. I do survival. I teach all kinds of cool people, but I always tell my family where it is that I'm going and when they can expect me back home. It's vitally important. That will help you get not lost more than anything else. It'll help you lost-proof yourself so you don't need maps and compasses. But what I want to do is make sure that we have all that background covered before we start learning about maps and compasses. But sometimes you might get lost, or you might be confused about where you are. Here's what's really important. If you find that you are lost and you don't know where you are, even if you're just going down the street or you're going into the wilderness on a hike, then you need to literally sit down and stop. I call it hug a tree. That way, if I go somewhere and I get lost, I just hug a tree, because somebody's going to come looking for you. And if you're running around going here and going there, then it's going to be hard for them to find you. But if you sit down, it's going to be a whole lot easier for them to be able to find you. The first map we're going to look at is this one right here. Don't see a lot of stuff on that one, do you? That's because you're going to draw this. So get you a piece of paper and you can draw this as well. What we're going to do is we're just going to put a square on our piece of paper, and that square is going to mean where we live, whether it's our house or our apartment building or wherever it is that we live. And what we want to know is which side of our house is which direction. So let's look at the 4 directions. We have 4. We have north. We have over here east. We have down here south. And we have over here west. Now, if you look at maps, a lot of times they won't even write out the whole word. They'll just have the first letter. And sometimes it's hard for me to remember which one's which, so here's how I remember it. See, this is north, east, south, and west. N-E-S-W. Never eat sour watermelon. That's an easy way for me to remember north, east, south, and west. North is this direction, east is here, south is here, and west is here. Now, depending upon where your house is, the sun is going to come up on one side. Let's say that the sun comes up on this side of your house. How you like that sun right there? That looks good, doesn't it? That's the sun coming up. And over here, this is where the sun goes down. Now, what we know is that when we look at it, the sun always rises in the east and it always goes down in the west. And so as far as our house is concerned, this side of our house is the east side of the house, and over here is the west side of the house. So if you're looking at that, which side of the house is this? Well, that's the north side of the house. And this is the south side of the house. So now, if you do that with a map, what you can do is you will then know the 4 cardinal directions. That's what these are called, the 4 cardinal directions of where your house is and where it sits on the earth. Because this is what's important. For example, if you see a storm coming and it's coming from the west on a newscast, then you know that the storm is coming over here. If you have a window on your house open over here, you probably need to close it. Or if I'm going to set up a shelter, I might go over here and set up a shelter over here because the wind is going to be blocked by the house because most of the wind is coming from over here. And so knowing our 4 directions and paying attention to how the wind blows and where the sun rises and sets is going to be vitally important. Now there's all kinds of maps. There's some maps that are just trail maps. There's some that have all kinds of information on them that is very important information. And what we have here is a map that's going to be really fundamental, basic, and we want to use it to learn a lot about what we can learn about maps. Now, if we want to utilize this and apply it to an actual map, there's a lot of things that we're going to learn from a map. The first off is that those 4 cardinal directions are exactly the same as this one right here. So up here on a map is north. Remember, never eat sour watermelon. North, east, south, and west. So we have a map here that will tell us all the information we need as far as direction. But there's a lot more information on here, and we want to learn what it tells us. Here's some things that we can learn. Look at all the different colors that are on here. Areas that are green typically mean that that area is forested or has some trees or something like that. If the area is white, sometimes gray, that means that is like a neighborhood, a suburban area or an urban area or a city. So if you take a look at these 2 maps, which one of these is of a city and which one of them is of a bunch of woods? Yeah, sure, there's a lot more green on this map, so what we're looking at here is a forested area. But there's a lot more colors. You'll notice here, there's a lot of big triangles or little squares of blue, and over here on this one, there's a whole lot of squiggly lines that are blue. Blue, and I'm sure you guessed this already because you're pretty smart, usually means water. And so in this case right here, what we're looking at is a bunch of creeks. Here's a river. You'll notice that this one is kind of dashed, but this one is solid. This solid line means this waterway is going to have water nearly all year long. And if it's dashed, it means a lot of times it'll dry up in the summertime. Now, you'll also notice that there's a lot of black lines in here, and it may be hard to see, but all these little lines right here are dark black. And you'll see right here that there's some numbers here that are black. And there is a little spot right there that is black. Anything that you see as black is man-made. And so what you're looking at when you see black things on a map is typically buildings or roads. And then sometimes roads will be like this. Like these are really big roads. And so this is an interstate right here. So it has its own special color. This is a big highway right here, so it even has a different color. And then what we have right here, this dash line, is a trail in the middle of the woods. So these are all things that are really important for me and you to know if we're going to pick up a map. The other thing that's really important is the scale, and that's what we'll discuss next. When we're looking at scales, one of the things that we want to make sure that we're understanding is this lets us know how far things are on the map. So if you see this scale right here, it says scale 1.24,000. That means 1 inch on the map equals 24,000 inches on the actual Earth. And so that scale, I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute, but that scale changes on any map. So this map right here has a scale of 1.12,800, and this one's even different than that. Some maps are free and made of paper, and so they show a big, huge area, and so the scale will be different, whereas I paid money for this map, not a lot of money, but I paid money for this map, and I need to understand that some scales are different than others. Let me explain what that means. Now the scale is really important to understand, and this scale on this map is 1.24,000. And what that means is 1 inch on the map equals 24,000 inches on the actual Earth. Because you're smart and you know that a map that we fold up and can put in our pocket is something that is not going to be the same size as the Earth. So this is a picture of the Earth reduced down. So what I like to do with the scale is I like to lay my finger on it. See how it has the scale right here and you have these dark and white spots? So you have 0, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and 1 mile. So I'll lay my pinky finger right along that, and from that end to about right there on my pinky finger is 1 mile long. So if I lay that on my map, even though these look really close together on the map, if I lay that down, well, it's almost a full mile from that little pond right there to that little pond right there. See those blue lines, or those blue circles? That's almost a whole mile. So if I'm standing right here at this water and I want to walk to that one, I'm going to have to walk a mile. And that's how you utilize a map. Now, what we need to be able to do is know when we're standing at that waterway, or let's say we're standing in our neighborhood and we want to walk to our friend's house, do we walk north, south, east, or west, and how far is it? So one of the things that I like to do is use a compass for that. So I'm going to show you how to use a compass next. So think about it. If we're going to walk from that little waterway over to here, then this is almost going west. Remember, north, east, south, and west. So I'm standing here and I'm going this direction on the map, then I'm going west. So think about it. If you're at your house and you've got a friend that lives down the street from you, or you have an apartment and you look and your friend's apartment is down the hallway, which direction is that hallway? Think about that. So if the sun is coming up at the end of the hallway and it comes up, that's east, you're walking east. So let's look at a compass and how this makes this all a whole lot easier. So let's say that we want to go due west, meaning we want to go straight west. You'll notice, matter of fact, I've got a compass that you can probably find at any store, but let's look at this big old compass because it makes it a whole lot easier to see for what we're doing here. So you'll see this line right here, that big arrow, that's what's called the direction of travel. When I hold my compass, I want to hold that right in front of me because that's the direction I want to travel. That's the direction I want to walk. What we also have here is what's referred to as the index line. See that line, that red line that's underneath this circle? That's what's called the index line. So we have, if you'll look on the compass, we have north, east, south, and west. And we determined that we wanted to walk west. So we turn our compass until west is on that line. And then this is the north arrow. Now where does north point? North always points to north. And we like to call the north arrow the red Fred. But see this big tall house right here? This is what we refer to as the red shed. And so what we want to do is we want to walk until the north arrow is inside the big tall shed. That's what we call red Fred in the red shed. When we do that, our compass is going to be pointing west. This is again the direction of travel. Now, this will make a lot more sense when I get an actual compass, and I'll show you how to use it. So now we have an actual compass, and when we have an actual compass, the red arrow right there, what we called red Fred, always points north. So no matter where my compass is, that red arrow is always pointing north. It doesn't matter where this part right here is. Watch, as I rotate this, the red Fred arrow is always pointing north. But we figured out we want to utilize this line to walk west. So we set our compass to west. See the W right there? We set that to west. Now what did we say we had to do with our north arrow, our red Fred? We got to put it in the red shed. So if I turn this, see how the north arrow is still pointing north? If I do that, and now red Fred is in the red shed, then this direction right here is west, where that is pointing. So that is some really basic stuff on how to use a map and compass, and it sounds a bit confusing sometimes, but here's what you need to know, and it's really important. Know where the sun comes up. Look, when the sun comes up first thing in the morning, that's east. When it goes down at night, that's west for the most part. And that way you already know east and west just because of the sun. You don't have to have a map, you don't have to have a compass, you don't have to have anything, and you already know, have a good idea of where east and west is. With that fundamental, the main thing I want you to be able to know is in your backyard, where's the sun come up? Where's the sun go down? That's really important. If wind's going to blow, where does the wind blow? It usually comes in from about south and west for us here where we live. If we know that, then we can set our shelter up so the rain does not blow into our shelter. If we have a window open on the house, we know, hey, we got to go close that window because that's where the rain comes in. And as far as leaving your house and going hiking in the woods or just going through your neighborhood, remember this. This is vitally important. Always tell somebody where you're going, when you expect to return home, and who you're going with. That way, if something happens to you, somebody can get to you and take care of you. In the next video, we're going to be talking about survival, water, and food.